Welcome to the January 30th, 2023 study session of the Stillwater City Council. This time I'll call this meeting to order. And we just have one item on our study session agenda tonight. I'm very excited to hear from Mr. Brady Moore about a presentation of data gathered by staff and the parking committee for guidance on public parking areas.
Yep.
It's all yours, Brady.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Brady Moore on behalf of the City Manager's Office. I'm excited to present to you the Parking Committee findings from the Parking Committee that you as Council approved on August 15th last year. Up here I have a quote that I actually pulled from our core commercial districts master plan. Commonly it's referred to as our 2005 PUMA plan. But I thought it was so true, so I wanted to read it to start the presentation. It has been said that parking is not rocket science, it's harder. Parking is a specialized area of expertise that impacts people in very different ways, direct ways. It is political, it generates passion, it can generate controversy, it is expensive, it impacts economic development. Because of our dependence on the automobile, it's a critical piece of our civic infrastructure, one that must be effectively planned, managed, and maintained like any other infrastructure resource. So, on that note, on an overview of kind of what we're going to do this evening for our study session, I want to walk you through the parking committee process that we did as a committee meeting, some of the findings that we determined through those discussions, as well as I'm going to invite a few of the stakeholders from each district groups to come speak to you briefly, and then I will come back up and answer questions and get your guidance for kind of the next steps as we move forward. So for those listening that may not know what we mean when we say core commercial districts, in the area of study for this committee, this parking committee was specifically the areas of downtown, those areas south of 6th Street. I know we consider areas north of 6th Street also downtown, but for this focus, we focus south of 6th. For Campus Corner and the Strip, we kind of combined into a common group to study the areas, the core districts around campus. Again, Campus Corner is kind of that McKnight Center moving east and around Campus Corner. That's Knobloch around to Eskimo Joe's, and even as far down as like Matthews Street next to Gallagher-Iba. The Strip, of course, Washington Street that we all know well, the University's 6th Street specific area, and the surrounding blocks. The role of this committee, again, this was commissioned by you on August 15th last year. We opened up the sign up on our website for 2 weeks, and everyone who signed up was invited to participate in the committee. We wanted this to be stakeholder-led findings to City Council. Obviously, we all believe in having citizen-led action and want to hear their voice when we make decisions as a city, and so we wanted them to be part of this committee. We wanted the districts to identify the challenges that are specific to their districts and work with us as city leadership and management for the solutions. We held 3 meetings at the library, and and throughout the process, I encouraged the committee to email observations, concerns. I mean, they're the ones that are living in these districts. As new things came up, they sent emails and ideas for improvement, and I shared many of those emails, most of those emails in your packet for this evening. As we started the first meeting, some of the general disclaimers that I went through with the committee is, I just kind of listed them here, but this is that public parking is a dynamic system, and what I mean by that is it's not something you just you set it and you forget it. It constantly needs monitoring and adjustment, especially as we have new growth in different areas or new things come on board that are built near campus that are affecting districts. We constantly have to monitor and change things. So that's why we're here. Any positive change will have a negative change. Again, as that quote that I started with, public parking is complicated. Something that may be good for one business or one merchant may have a negative effect on the other merchant in their way of business. So that's why I challenged them to understand, what district parking is. When you're part of a district, you have to have a community-minded approach. you have to think, what is best for the entire system or the entire district. Understanding of right-of-way, that area in between property lines that the city has the ability to design well and function well for the community. So just understanding where we have our lanes that we can be creative and do new things. Stillwater is not alone. Many communities are addressing parking issues. In the last couple of weeks, I had conversations with professionals in the industry who said they named multiple communities around us in Arkansas, Texas, Kansas that are dealing with the same issues, especially in vibrant towns. It's a great thing to be part of a vibrant town that's dealing with parking issues and growth. The goal is compliance, not tickets. What I mean by that is that we strive for healthy turnover in a good public parking system. We want good turnover. We don't want abuse of the system. That's something that we don't want. And then the last item is free parking is not free. It's, every article, some of the articles I shared with the group says this. It's just there is a high cost to maintaining parking. Creating more public parking and properly managing public parking just takes funding. The current challenges that I presented to you in August as we were starting to establish this committee were the things that I had heard from people in these districts, some of the vendors in these districts, and they were asking for help on. So these initial things I presented to the committee that we need to look at possibly adjustments to time parking, new on-street parking, maybe paid parking options through a modern management system that we'll look at in a little bit. New structured parking garage options, employee designated areas designated for commercial vehicles and current residents. Those are especially important in the downtown areas where we need some help on those items. And then we talked about the public realm design. Again, that right-of-way, that area that we as a city have the ability, with proper funding, to creatively improve our public realms, whether it's wider sidewalks, changing the way we do parking and loading zones, and landscaping. And so one of the things I showed the committee in our first meeting was this snapshot from our 6th Street corridor study. This is as they looked at Campus Corner and the Strip as part of their 6th Street corridor project. They looked at the Strip and what could we do to improve the Strip, or what are some options. And this is the current conditions as we look at the Strip. And then you can see how it changes with, again, redesigning that right-of-way, making it more friendly to pedestrians and visitors, making it more aesthetically pleasing. And I know Claudia will maybe comment later. She's not a fan of the trees and the health of them, but
sorry for the trees.
that's right. But anyway, it does give us a great view of what can occur with revenue, with a new design to the parking or the right-of-way in this area. Again, here's a picture of an up-close view of Washington and 4th. Again, you can see how you can reimagine that space and redesign it. One of the things as I met with the Washington Street merchants, they strongly desire the ability. It would be great to easily block off the Strip from 4th to University for busy weekends, events, game day weekends, for safety concerns, and just the ability for more people to safely enjoy the Strip area. So all those are things that do tie in to parking. At our first meeting, we had a breakout session by district. So after we spoke to the entire group, we divided into 2 groups, the Campus Corner and the Strip group, and then we also had a downtown group. And we provided these big yellow sticky pads that they could write down anything, just a brainstorm session on what are issues, what are things that you see as challenges to parking in your districts. And we just laid them all up on the wall. And then the next thing we did was we gave them each so many stickers and able to go vote on kind of what are their top priorities. And just a way to kind of get that data and see where things land. And so this is the Strip Campus Corner District. I'm not going to walk through everything, but I did want you to see it. It was in your packets. This was for the Campus Corner group and the Strip. And Steve Spradling, I will mention, he's the director of OSU Parking. He wanted to be on this committee. He's been great to work with the city on these parking issues in the past. He was not able to attend the first meeting, and we recognized that we needed their help or their involvement into finding solutions because of the impact that students and faculty have on those districts while school is in session. And Steve saw this when I sent the summary email out, and he immediately called and said, I'm going to be at your next meeting. I'm going to bring lots of data. And so that was really helpful. Our group spent quite a long time talking to him. And so anyway, as we listed out and voted, those priority votes are where those stickers landed. And then we, from that, tried to say, okay, how do we take all these items and chunk them into like 4 or 5 major things that we can address in our next meeting. So when you see the agenda item column and the agenda items listed out below, that's where they kind of all fell. And I'm going to go into more detail on those later. Again, this is for the downtown district, where their votes landed. A lot of it was based on, additional parking, whether that be a centralized parking hub, more lots, adjustments to parking, planning for Block 34 growth, and events that are going to occur in the district. Again, we took all those, tried to pile them into 4 items that we could focus on for our second meeting. At that second meeting, we discussed each of those. As I mentioned, Steve Spradling from OSU came and gave us a lot of great information on OSU statistics, and then I took time to make these maps because I just felt like I needed to grasp how many counts we had for each of those timed areas. And so this was helpful for our group to just discuss, number one, how much parking that we are responsible for as a city to maintain and to monitor. Some of the things that surprised me were, one, just how much parking, we didn't study. It wasn't part of the study was like the Greek neighborhood that is just to the west, which, is impacted by public parking. It costs money to maintain, and it does have an impact, obviously, when the students are in session. We looked at the different timed areas where we thought adjustments would be, where we thought, some areas that kind of surprised us why they weren't timed. One of the members of the committee pointed out, I don't know if you can see, I don't know if my mouse is coming up, but there's 3, where Garage Burger is over there on Elm, there's 3 spots just to the north of it. On a pretty long section that OSU has some abandoned, they've torn down the homes or whatever, there's just abandoned drive-throughs that we don't have parking. But I sketched up to scale, and we could easily get about 20 spaces in the right-of-way right there. So we could turn those 3 into about 20 spaces. Again, takes revenue to create that additional right-of-way parking. As we looked at downtown and the downtown district, obviously one of the things that we're looking at is Block 34, the impact that we're going to have on the upcoming construction and working with them. We have 148 spots total right now surrounding Block 34. 62 of those are those interior spots that we know we're going to lose when the block is reconstructed, which is awesome. We all recognize that Block 34 is going to be a blessing to our community. But those lost spots for employee parking will be an impact to the district. And so we need to discover ways to find additional parking or make some adjustments to time parking to accommodate for that and for events. In both districts, we were able to look at areas where we believe we can add additional right-of-way parking. I mean, more inventory for parking is going to help each district. We know that. It's just how do we generate that revenue to add it. We're trying to encourage anytime there's new development like Stone Cloud, we added more parking right in front. That's been a great thing. And as more developments happen south of 9th, we're hoping to add more parking and work with the TIF funds to help do some of that. So jumping into findings for each of the districts. First, for the campus corner and the strip, one of the top things that they were looking for is just we need a new parking management system to increase turnover. I applaud our current enforcement. They do a great job with the current technology of chalking that we use, they do the best they can. But we know, I observed it from being a business owner downtown for 16 years. There's people that know how to use that system, unfortunately. So they were asking for us to really look at utilizing a more modern parking system. 2, employee parking. Employee parking is an issue on the Strip. A lot of the merchants buy parking from the OSU parking garage on 4th. OSU is actually maxed out what they'll allocate. I think they have 74 spots allocated to downtown area merchants, or the Strip merchants, excuse me, and they've maxed those out. And so on game days, or many times, they just encourage their employees to Uber or Lyft into the district to be dropped off. And that brings up one of the other things. That third item is just loading and unloading zones on the Strip. The issues with trash, even, I know that they've invited, which I love. These conversations have helped get our waste management director, Matt Faulkner, involved with them, and they're looking for solutions on trash. But all that ties into parking. I know even like as we go into number 4, or before I go into number 4, Uber and Lyft zones. You see a lot of times in vibrant communities that have a lot of bars or a lot of areas where people need to be picked up, having that designated area, having proper wayfinding, which ties into number 4. One thing I thought that was interesting is when we did that brainstorming session is how much in both districts they talked about, we want new wayfinding. We want better lighting, safety lighting for our employees. This that desire for better sidewalks, maintaining, maybe new landscaping. Again, all things that require revenue in a proper system to encourage and to maintain. The findings for downtown, 1 and 2 are kind of interchangeable. As I looked at that even today, going through this, I think 1 and 2 are kind of both one. Looking for more public parking, especially with, maybe the options of a garage, again, the expense of a garage. As we looked back at our Puma plan that recommended a garage over Bank First, in 2005, it was average $12,000 a spot or $13,000 a spot. In 2022, at the beginning, kind of before the crazy inflation, it was $26,000 a spot. So it's doubled in that time to do a parking garage. Looking for ways to do on-street and increasing inventory, basically, looking at ways that we can better manage our lots, and then time parking adjustments. Again, Block 34 events, allocations on time, making those adjustments, finding areas where we can do commercial. We have commercial vans and commercial trucks parked throughout our district on public parking for free. We have residents that would like to have a designated area, even if it means some walking distance. And all those things need kind of a new management system in order to incorporate. Number 3, just a new parking management system to increase turnover. This was a lower priority on the downtown group than the Campus Corner University group. 4, public realm improvements. Again, same thing I mentioned a second ago, wayfinding, signage, lighting, those things that we would all love to see improved in our different districts. Okay, so if we try to take those 4 things from each district and kind of just summarize them into what is the main things that we're trying to drill down to? What can we do as a city to address these things? I think we just need to look for a better management system for public parking, increasing that parking spot turnover, right? That healthy turnover that districts need in order to have parking available for customers. Utilizing modern technology. Eliminate abuse of the current parking system. I've already gone into that. Number 2, revenue to create new parking, like in the right-of-way, maintain and manage public parking. Of all those things, the wayfinding, the lighting, the new parking that we'd love to see, better management, all those things require funding. And so that's a real challenge that we're up against as a city. And I just wanted to talk real quick about like I keep mentioning, like a modern or more efficient management system. This is goes back to something I shared in August. I was able to go to Lawrence, Kansas in October of 2021 and spend a day with them looking at the new management system that they had just implemented. We got to ride around in the cars and see the license plate recognition technology go. It was honestly just amazing to see how fast we could go and safely go and see it just read every license plate, no matter what state they were from, and could determine if, through lifetime parking database, if that person had was supposed to be parking in there, whether it's through a permit, whether it's through checked in on an app. It was just really neat to see how they utilize that data and that technology to make sure parking is available, that you have that healthy turnover in districts. The modern system allows for parking zones, permits, designated areas. I mean, if we look at doing maybe a parking district in areas in the future, and selling permits or having permits available for those commercial vehicles that are utilizing free public parking for their business, this system would allow for us to set those zones and adjust the rules. And what I mean by that is, you can look at the data and say, how often do we want turnover and how much availability do we need? And so you manage that. And so people can check in and for a couple hours in a district, but they can't come back for so many hours to that district. And you learn how to create that healthy turnover again. Obviously, a modern system can allow you to have revenue to support parking infrastructure, right? Capture that revenue. One of the big things that we've seen in cities like Oklahoma City recently, Lawrence, Kansas, that I observed firsthand, and is that when you do implement a new system like this and you have revenue, a significant amount of revenue coming in, is that you dedicate a large portion of that revenue going back into those districts to create the right-of-way, to create those things that we want, those public realm improvements that we want to see, and make it our districts continue to be a destination district that you want to be. I mean, I believe Stillwater's has incredible districts with downtown, the Strip, and Campus Corner, and I think people want to come to those districts. And I think as they have parking available and have some of these nice amenities that we see in other cities, I think that's going to only increase and rise the tide of those businesses. Next step, so we want to hear your guidance before in our discussion tonight. As we as staff try to just think, okay, what are next steps? This is a big, complex problem, right? It is truly like kind of rocket science, and it has a negative effect on different applications that you install. I feel like that the Campus Corner group and the Strip group are I don't want to use the word begging, they're strongly asking for us to look at a way to implement a modern parking system. They're ready for it. They want to see this new technology, this new implementation in place. There is a long process to this, and we would need somewhat of not a long process, but we need a professional service, like someone that is an expert in this field to come in and say, this is how you do it. I believe, and I know a lot of us do, in incremental change, right? We don't need to do a blanket approach that has a negative impact on the entire community. Let's take some targeted areas and let's start implementing it, and let's measure those results and make changes as we need to. We also will need to look at revision of code, parking operations. One thing that multiple communities that have implemented these new systems is they've decriminalized time parking, right? There's benefits to that. It can help in your relationship with the community. To a little forgiveness, you will occasionally make some mistakes, and help with some of those validations. And then when unpaid tickets are not paid, those could move through the municipal system. So there's a lot of things that we need to look at and get good expert eyes on. Again, that dedicated revenue that we would set aside for those districts, let their groups that oversee their districts plan on how they want that money to be implemented, whether it's through new parking, maintaining parking, maintaining the damage. One email you saw was a significant damage to some of the parking, and people were tripping. And so this would give us those funds to help us bring some of the amenities to these districts. Downtown, it really is, we feel that it is a just needed adjustment to some of these time areas to accommodate for Block 34. We need to look at general improvements to support some of the new development. Again, that's kind of creating those additional parking spots in the right-of-way. And examine lots, look for new lots, or examine our current lots and see how we can designate those areas for some of those commercial vehicles, perhaps selling permits to them. I thought it was interesting as I began this presentation with that quote from the Puma Plan. As I was reading through it again this week, I noticed that in 2005, it recommended for the parking districts of the campus commercial districts, the stakeholders and merchants in the Washington Street, again, this from 2005, Strip and Knobloch Street campus corner areas were very supportive of implementing paid on-street parking in their districts to promote on-street parking space turnover. So again, exactly what we're talking about in 2005 is still true today. And then what they said for downtown is again from our 2005 master plan. The downtown group would like to have a new parking management system. It's recommended to be administered by the city of Stillwater for all the core districts. In downtown, this new parking management program would aim to meet the following objectives: improve the ease and ability and availability of parking for customers, employees, and visitors, and to create new parking supply to encourage the growth of downtown and encourage new investment that attracts jobs, residents, customers, and visitors. I just want to again thank so much the members of this parking committee. Throughout the process, they communicated well. Some came here to meet, some gave us phone calls, a lot sent emails, just giving their ideas and their feedback into how they can improve Stillwater's public parking. So I want to thank each one of them. I know they all couldn't be here tonight with the weather. And then now I'm going to invite up 4 of the members to just quickly speak on behalf of their district and some of their things that they want to emphasize. First will be Dustin McDonald from Chris's University Spirit on Campus Corner, and then Claudia Humphreys with Coney Island on the Strip. We'll then have Katie Bean from Pro Value Net and Scott Jones from Simmons Bank. And then I'll come back and answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Council, for sitting here and listening to this committee tonight. Dustin McDonald, owner of Chris's University Spirit on Campus Corner. Been part of Campus Corner since 1998, so 25 years in that area. And to not reinstate what Brady said, but parking comes at an extreme cost. It is not free. I see it every day from my front doors of students abusing parking in front of our businesses each and every day, Monday through Friday. Getting out of their cars with their backpacks, walking to campus, and taking up customer parking. For many, many years, we had a dedicated parking lot that UHBC would rent to the merchants of Campus Corner that we all paid for our employees to park. We no longer have that. And now we have the School of Music that is there on campus, off campus, that students literally take that entire parking lot every day at no cost. We as merchants paid for those spots to the church, and we no longer have those spots, and those students park there for free, leaving our employees with nothing. So, like I said, parking comes at a very high cost. There are challenges to parking, but I think the days of chalking tires is a little antiquated, and we need to look at more of an app-based system that is valuable for all the citizens. I truly think that if you go to a district, you're going there for a reason, and you are willing to pay something to go to that district. People do it in Tulsa, people do it in Oklahoma City, people do it all across the United States to various areas that they want to go visit, eat, shop for a short period of time and pay a small price to do that, to guarantee themselves parking in that area. There are many times that we may want to eat on the strip and we have to circle 4 or 5 times and end up leaving because there's no parking. Also, for the employee's sake, I think there needs to be design systems that are safe for employees, that you can get your employees to and from work, that that are nicely lit. I know Claudia's talked about this for her employees, but if your employees are having to walk 2 to 3 blocks to work every day, that's an important thing that they have safety. But I think it's a major issue that this town faces, and I think it's something that we need to look at and kind of revitalize and update and make it better for all the citizens. So, but I appreciate your time listening to this. Thank you.
Thanks, Dustin. Hey, Dustin, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Where do employees of the Strip or Campus Corner park? Yours or others? I think the Hideaway has a lot right behind their building, correct?
They have a lot that they have recently painted to have a few employees.
Okay.
It's not all their employees. I have made an agreement with another person in the area that we pay $250 a month for our staff for 6 spots. So it's a free for all.
It's just you guys all of just try to find some option, or your employees just park in.
Yep, and we had those guaranteed options with the church for many years. I estimated we probably paid $30,000 to $40,000 as a whole of Campus Corner for our employees to park in that lot, and it was well maintained, well managed. But now it's a free for all. So it's wherever you can park. It's park 2 blocks away, walk in the rain. So
how many overall spots do you think would be needed for employees? You said
for our district alone, probably 75, I would think. You've got, there's several retailers on Campus Corner between all of us combined. So, and not everybody's going to get guaranteed a spot. So, that's just the premium of parking. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
I'm sorry, you said the church parking lot is now just a free-for-all and they don't, nothing's monitored and students just park there for free?
Park for free. Yep, no longer monitored. There's signs there that say you need a permit, but students are smart. They figured it out really quick, so.
They're not charging you for permits still, are they?
No.
Okay.
They stopped pre-COVID. Right after COVID, so. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Claudia Humphreys, owner of Coney Island on the Strip. Nice to see you guys out. I know it's not the most pleasant of environments, so thank you for coming in. I would say that one of the problems that we have on the Strip is we have several parking complexes around us, and they have to buy parking permits additional to their rent. And so it's cheaper for them to park around 4 o'clock, and if our monitor's not monitoring that day, they come sooner than that. But they'll park right around 4:15. Again, students are very smart, and they don't come get their cars again until 9, and they'll just move them. So the whole night time from 4 o'clock on, those cars are just parked all night long, and they never leave. And so, we're trying to I hear all the time, why do you not go to the Strip? And they say, well, we can't find anywhere to park. We're losing so much revenue on the Strip between retail districts and restaurants and bars because people can't park. Literally, that's their number one reason is we can't. I don't like driving around looking for a parking place. I bought a parking lot and we put 9 people in there and we kept it full. And it has Park Mobile in it. And when we quit monitoring it closely, but it still stayed full. And then it's all people going to Fuzzies and Coney's and, close by Pickleman's and all that because they can't park. The other issue that I have is there's a lot of late night businesses along the Strip. And you have young men and women that are bartending until 3 o'clock in the morning. And they're parked a long ways off. And they have to walk by themselves at that time of night and it's not lit up. Now, some of them will get friends, got a parking place that's close enough, they'll walk down and then they'll ride with their friend, but if that doesn't happen, then they're just walking by themselves at night. And so we have nowhere to park our employees. And so we tried to rent from the university, they don't have places. I asked them, please, when it comes open this year, will you call me? I need about 10, just so that everybody that's on staff and we can rotate back and forth. But we can't even get the parking places. Our staff was using my parking lot because they have nowhere to go. And I'm not secure with those kids walking around at night at 3 o'clock in the morning. And people think they're bartending and they have money on them, that's just, but the reality is it's a major issue. And it's a major issue for even the retail stores because they can't get people to come in because nobody wants to deal with it. Paid parking, it's going to be a challenge on the Strip because you're going to have to make it expensive enough that the students aren't willing to take the hit, but not too expensive to harm the retailers. So there is going to be, and we know that. I mean, the committee was very well aware of this. There's just going to be this juggle, and that's why Brady is saying we need to bring someone in to help us figure this out. But they're going to just park and just walk. And the fraternity houses, if they don't have enough spaces, those kids are over here. I mean, I love the college kids. They're great, but the parking places are a problem. There's only about 50 on the Strip. So, and then all the Uber drivers and the DoorDash drivers and all that stuff are taking up people's parking places. So it's not the customers, unfortunately. So, if you have any questions?
You were saying that some of the residents of those areas they have to
apartment
pay-
complexes.
The newer apartment complexes, they have to pay for additional parking passes to park at their complex, and they don't buy them, so they just park on the street? That's
Yes.
good to know.
And we've been told that by several people, not just, I didn't realize that till several people came in. Oh no, it's more expensive to park there in their parking garages than it is to park on OSU. So they're the ones that are buying that 4th Street, Ramsey Street garage. Those college students are buying the spaces up in there that go to their apartments because it's cheaper than getting the.
It's cheaper to park on campus than in those apartments?
Yes.
That's crazy to hear.
That's what we were
Parking on
told. I
campus is-
didn't look into the numbers, but that's what I was told, so.
Well, I've noticed that this on-street parking on Ramsey between those complexes is also untimed.
Yes,
Because
there's a lot
every
of
time you go
untimed
down
around
there,
us.
it's totally full, which I would assume those are just residents in there.
And you go 1 block to the west of us, all along there, all of those are untimed. There's no, so, if we could get some of that, where they're not, the Greek houses are not using the side streets to park, then my employees might have somewhere that's closer to park, and we as a company, I could deal with some of that. That's not, it's just that we don't have options.
I think it's really challenging as you get into some of the residential parts of that because we have so many single family or homes that are housing more than one car, a lot more than
Correct.
one car. So residents probably utilize a lot more on-street
It
parking
is a
over there
mad
too.
dash when a car comes out of a parking lot on the Strip. There's some horn honking and snarky people if you take their spot, so.
How much, I assume you or other folks on the Strip have talked to some of the private lots around there to see what else might be available. Is there anything, those are all mainly,
I looked around, there's not really anything around us that's vacant.
Okay.
Everything that's been vacant has been, somebody's done something on or is parking on it and you can't rent it. There were some things, I know that Chad was renting some space for a while and someone else was renting some space, and just like what happened to Dust, they took the
Just
space
stopped doing
away.
it, yeah.
So we don't really have a lot of options. You'd have to go multiple blocks over. And I don't know, I haven't seen anything around us. And I looked around about a month ago. So everything's got a house on it. Now, some of the houses might not need to be there anymore, but that's not my job, so.
so you said you need 10 employee spots?
At least 10.
And so,
Just for me.
Given the number of businesses on.
Yeah,
talking at least in that 75.
And every
to-
restaurant there's probably has just like Pickleman's, they usually have 8 to 10 people there. When I'm counting, there's, just kind of checking it out. And I'm sure some of the other bars have even more than that.
So your folks just end up going west and parking in the
They
neighborhoods?
A lot of times I get dropped off and somebody has to come pick them back up at 3 o'clock or, it's just a scramble, to be honest with you. They don't park at the same place every time. They're all over. They can't afford to Uber back and forth. That's not sensible. So sometimes they can get a parking place, and sometimes they'll come in early in the day and park, and then go have somebody come get them and then bring them back. They're quite crafty about this, so.
I would assume in terms of schedules, when employees are coming in and when employees are leaving, is there any sort of coordination to that? Are you seeing?
All different, the businesses all do it differently.
different.
We have 3 shifts that we run a day. Retailers probably, I don't know what they run, but we run 3 shifts a day.
I'm just thinking like a joint employee shuttle. If you guys had if we found an off-premise spot and ran like a regular shuttle back and forth of some kind.
OSU's talking about releasing some of the paid parking at the bottom of Ramsey Street so that we might be able to rent some of that because they're not getting the revenue off of it. And that's the reason they're not getting the revenue off of it is because the parking is free everywhere else. So we're creating a little bit of a problem for just the whole area in the sense that we as a city are allowing everybody just to park wherever they want to for free. And your poor guy can't, the kids figure out the days he's there and he's not there. By 10 o'clock if he's going to be around. So.
How many time spots does the university have in that garage? Because the first floor of that garage is.
74 Park Mobile. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Those are all Park Mobile.
There's 74 spots down there, and they're not.
They're not being
getting
utilized
used?
because there's too much free space around them.
Well, but it sounds like the free space is usually full, so I'm
It
surprised
is.
that people aren't using it. Maybe they don't know it's there.
Well, my employees would have to pay for it for 8 hours.
Yeah.
So when you pay that rate for 8 hours, it's a lot of money. So that's why we would have to do it. We can't pay that
Sure.
particular rate for 8 hours 3 times a day. So that's the one reason why we don't use it. Now during homecoming and other games and stuff like that, I rented spots in the parking garage for my employees so that they could have a place to be because sometimes they end up being late because they can't find anywhere to park. And so nobody likes that. That's just kind of creates a bad atmosphere also. So, yeah, that's why my employees don't use that parking space because it's too expensive on an 8-hour time frame.
It escalates. The rate escalates.
I was going to say, I
Yeah.
assume it does that. Like if we had this, we could do it cheap for the first hour.
Yeah,
or
and
two,
I want to
then it
say
goes
it's
up.
$20 or $25 a day to do the
stay the whole
whole
day.
24 hours. But once you do 7 or 8 hours, you might as well be paying that amount anyway. So, and that's just too much. So that's why it doesn't because the college kids are using all those free spaces, they're not going to pay the $25 a day either. They're going to go circle the block and find that free spot in front of my store. Is that
Other
enough?
questions? Thanks, Claudia. Appreciate you
welcome.
being here.
Hello. Katie Bean. I'm with Pro Value Net downtown. It's my life story. I'll be really brief. I just want to thank the council on behalf of all of downtown and Pro Value Net that we do appreciate and see your concern and consideration of the parking problems that we all face and that you're looking at all the possible solutions. As Mr. Moore has pointed out, we do need a better, more modern management system for public parking. As our downtown grows and thrives, it needs to see changes to better accommodate all these changes. And I know we are on board with it. Change hurts, we all know that, but we also understand that it's all for the betterment for the town as a whole. So that's really about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I won't be long either since I'm the last one here. So, Mayor, City Council, thanks for the opportunity to be here. I want to really thank Brady. He's done yeoman's work on this, and like he said, I think in his opening slide, it's not brain surgery. It's probably harder than brain surgery, considering all the elements that are involved in how it affects so many people. I've been downtown. Well, I've been back in Stillwater, 34 years now, and most all that time's been downtown. So I've seen a lot of change over that time. So I guess I'm one of the older people, so I know about all that change. You know, early on downtown, I don't think parking wasn't near as much of an issue as it is now, even though it was an issue and always has been. But back then, you were more worried about the flight of businesses leaving downtown and going out to outside in the malls and everything else, and that was the hard thing that we're dealing with. And thankfully for the bid district and TIF and all those things that have done and the city is allowed to do, appreciate backing that and making that work, because we've seen downtown grow and prosper quite a bit in these last so many years, and to the point now where we've kind of come to a little bit of a crossroads in what we're going to do, because the more we try to attract businesses and entertainment and residents downtown, we're going to have to do something about the parking issue. It's just really gotten to be an issue that we can't overlook. It may, and like Brady said, I think we have to take this in steps. We can't jump in and say, hey, let's put up a parking garage wherever we can find it downtown, because as we know, that takes revenue, and that's going to be a cost that we probably can't bear right now. But some of these others, finding lots, finding different opportunities, time parking, I think it's just something we have to do. And the lighting and landscaping with people to walk. I've heard a lot of the merchants downtown say, well, it's all fine and good to park 2 or 3 blocks, but the lighting's terrible, and I'm afraid to let my employees walk and have to deal with that over that period of time. So I think those are some of the things we have to take into account. So any steps we can take, I think, is going to be a positive for us downtown, and all the issues we have at Campus Corner too in the Strip. I think it's just critical as we continue to grow and ask and look for people, because Block 34 is there's going to be more development happening. You know, we don't have a problem really parking where we're at 6th and Main so much, and actually the old Oklahoma Closing Building is going to come down, which we own now, and there will wind up be some parking and how we fit and try to do drive-in and all that, but there'll probably be some there, but it won't be near enough to help out in some of those entertainment venues that are going to be brought in. So, and I think the development around Block 34 is going to continue to be an issue. We do now, some of our employees rent some spaces from the Tubner Garage, and that is an option that I don't think is utilized, because I don't think people have been educated about it. I think you people know where I'm talking about in his garage over there, and I think that's definitely from an entertainment standpoint, even employee standpoint. He said he sold a lot of those, but there's probably only about 30 of them are even used. So anyway, certain things to think about, but I think we are at a crossroads. We got to do something about parking. So thank you.
Thank you, Scott. What's the solution, Brady?
I don't know. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, it's complicated. You know, I think we need more inventory. I mean, right? We need more inventory. The greatest impact right now on inventory and management is the areas surrounding campus when they're in school. No questions. Not a single person on those committee would argue with that, as you've heard tonight. Downtown has its own issues, but again, I think as we're seeing growth in new TIF projects, even going through the TIF committee today, there's going to be a higher demand on parking, and it will continue to be that. At the end of the day, it's a good problem to have. Stillwater is growing. People want to be here. People want to come to our districts and be a part of them. Our city has done a good job, and our enforcement teams have done a good job with the technology that they have and have been given to them. But I think there's new opportunities that we need to look at and explore. I have some maps. I know you guys may be ready to sum it up tonight. I drew some. I think it's worth showing just because it's kind of the conversations, but I have them prepped here. But about a year ago, Norman, or I actually think, Mayor, you were emailed by a person, a developer downtown, that said, hey, we need this parking garage, we need it tomorrow, right? And we've talked to these other communities, and they've said, And honestly, they've all said to a point, I even talked to a firm that designs parking garages. That's how they make their living. They said, don't do a parking garage. They're like, in a community, like they are so much to maintain. When I drove around Lawrence, the guy drove us around to all the parking garages and said, all that revenue that I've showed you that we're capturing right now in our new management system all goes to pay the notes on those parking garages. Let me drive you to those real quick. And they were empty. And they were mainly built for game days. When Steve Spradling came to talk to our group, he shared the same thing. He said all of our parking revenue for the entire campus, all the parking permits that the students pay, all go to support the notes on the parking garages. And the cost has gone so high that I know they had one planned right there north of Eskimo Joe's and the Garage Burger in that area by the new Catholic church. It's just off the tables right now because of the cost. So when we have that challenge, and I'll share this real quick. Again, in my CAD software, it may not be 100% to scale. I'll actually will say that, but it's close. You know, these orange areas are areas where we have the ability to make right-of-way parking spots. As new development comes in or as we work with those area owners but this is again in our right-of-way that butts up to their property, but there's a significant amount of parking spots that we can look to create. There's a parking lot south of Sherrar that we had conversations to see if we could make it a parking lot, and the church could use it on Sundays. There are opportunities on these notes here. You know, a 400 spot parking garage at Bank First, about $9.2 million. Again, that was December of 21. I think that cost has gone up. That's $23,000 per spot. You know, there is a way that I drew 344 new spots. We worked with Bank First, which we appreciate their community support. They changed their signs. We worked with them to change their signs. So now the Bank First lot that has 56 spots is free to the public after 8 to 5 on Monday through Friday, which is great. We're grateful for that. And then I'll show you the strip area in that area that Claudia and Dustin were talking about around the McKnight Center on the blocks outside the strip. So my mouse here, you can't see it. There's Washington, but there's kind of a cross there of orange parking spots. Again, areas of opportunity for right-of-way to create more right-of-way parking. But it just takes funds. It takes
Where
costs.
is that cross? What are those streets?
That is Jefferson and 4th. And then along that long strip of, is that Ramsey? Help me out, folks. Yes, Ramsey, there next to the McKnight Center is a long stretch where we have the opportunity to create a lot of right-of-way parking.
Yeah.
So, again, next steps, I think if it's council's, you know, kind of would agree on this, I think as city management, we can look at talking to a professional and expert in the industry and help us with implementation. I feel like we've done the study, right? And Vice Mayor Jalowski in our August meeting said, I think there's some good data there that we need to lean on. And you're right. I mean, I read from our 2005 plan that said, this is what we're recommending, and we're kind of recommending the exact same thing today. So it's, you know, it's time to implement it.
So 17 or 18 more years, we should be ready to go.
Yep. I think we should just kick it down the road a little longer.
I guess that was just one of my questions. So do we feel like, I mean, I agree. I think having a professional, right, these are really complicated. Just having somebody that's a little more out of the system to kind of look at it with a fresh set of eyes, and that's maybe not so tied into all the politics and things that can come into parking decisions. Do we feel like we have enough of the data to get them started, or do we think that would be a part of their process as well, is to kind of evaluate, right, this is the inventory we have, these are the needs that we have. I think sometimes it's hard to, right, that anecdotal information doesn't always match up with the data that we pull together.
It's a great question. So last week I spoke to someone a group that OSU recommended that I just contact them and just see, you know, in this process, are we at the right crossroads of ready to initiate an expert in the field to come in and look. And they said, yes, you've done a lot of the work we would have had to do. Obviously, there's still going to be some study. They're going to have to examine some of those counts of the maps and understand the issues. Take this data and the feedback that the findings of the parking committee has collected and say, okay, these are the areas. And they all said you have to do it in increments. Like we can target areas, we can read that data, we can then see where the next areas to implement are. And I think the key of all of this is that this revenue, it will be significant. I mean, Lawrence, Kansas is seeing significant revenue through their parking system.
What does significant mean?
I knew you were going to ask that number. I looked on my old notes in my iPad right before the meeting, and I don't want to be quoted because I don't know exactly what they're relaying in their annual report, but it was somewhere around, I don't know, $500,000 a year.
So hundreds of thousands rather than tens of thousands.
Yes.
And that's net of the costs of maintaining the systems, or is that?
Yeah, that's just the revenue they're creating, and they're, like Oklahoma City, putting it back in those districts. And I think that's key. Not 100% of it. Obviously, you need some to support the management system, but like Oklahoma City had an article where they were doing I think it was a 60-40 split, but there's some type of dedicated funds that are set aside, bookmarked for those districts, and then they would sit as their boards, which we have boards in each of those districts, would say this is how we want. They'd work with the city to say this is how we want this implemented, whether it's creating more parking or it's doing those public realm improvements. All those things need to be worked out, and that's where we would love to have some kind of expert in that field come do it.
I think it'd be interesting to hear an expert and see, you've talked about taking incremental steps. There's obviously two distinct issues right now. One is the employee parking, and the other is not letting students or others game the system and park at length in the public parking. But those are, I guess, a little at odds, I guess, because if you're trying to find parking for employees, then the technology apps, they're still going to have to pay to park places. So have you, in talking to other communities, have you seen how they balance that?
As far as employee parking, I have not. I have not examined that aspect I was more focused on how they were doing their management system and just how it worked in their community. But no, as far as employee parking, and that is a struggle, right? Because as we create or try to create more space for customers, that does, it is a factor that's so important. And so it's something I know that some of the community members, some merchants go to quite an extent of taking on that expense for their employees. Some retailers, through these discussions, have said that's the city's responsibility to provide parking for their employees in these areas. So, it's an issue.
One of the things I'd like to ask, to be sure that you're thinking through as you continue through this process, is I have a number of clients who either, it's not just stereotypical because of age either, just don't use technology, don't like technology, don't have smartphones, don't want smartphones, don't know how to use their smartphones. And that could be a problem trying to park in downtown and places where they go that we might start requiring this. So how are we going to get around that, whether it's a kiosk or whatever, how are we going to manage through that?
Yeah, so there are options that we will have to explore with some expert in the field, but basically what I've seen in other communities and even on our own campus here in Stillwater is the options of kiosk pay, which to me seems more complicated sometimes than just the app base, where it's a sign at every parking spot that says you can text to pay, you can call to pay, and you can obviously use an app or a QR reader to pay. There's communities that are going straight like us. Starksville, Mississippi, where Mississippi State is, went straight from no parking to completely app-based parking. No paid parking, just time parking, to app-based parking. And
their app has physical, non-app
has all those options.
Right?
Yeah, and I think it's as a former retailer, that I would have to recognize those customers and say, did you have any issue parking? And work with them. Oh, I didn't even notice I needed to pay. You can say, okay, well, I want to walk you through the process. If there's validation codes, there's lots of things that you can work to mitigate that.
Yeah, I mean, that's my question about some of these systems. And I've seen, I was in downtown Tulsa last weekend. They've got Park Mobile, I think, in most of their downtown area, and that's what OSU uses in their lots. And that, Claudia, is what you have in your lot. I mean, I assume that, well, I know you can do different zones and different rates in different zones, and evidently you can do progressive rates where it's an hour or a quarter for the first hour and then $20 for the second hour or something along those lines. Would they allow us to, so Dustin was talking about the church lot, which I have some experience with. I know they're not doing that anymore because it's so hard to enforce the parking, right? If someone parks there, it's not supposed to be there. They got to get a tow truck out, all that kind of stuff. If there's a private lot like that, could we put them in the system as well and do some kind of, if there are some of these private lots in these areas that say, hey, I'd put mine in your app, give me 10% of the 20% or 75% of the profit or whatever it is. I mean, is that sort of thing, is there that much flexibility in these systems that we could bring some of the private lots into them? We can do different zones and say, and employees, you have this code you can use when you're parking for work, and so therefore it gets paid for. Is that's
something obviously our city attorney would have to review as far as us enforcing. You're talking because it's an enforcement issue there at that point, right? I mean, as zones, you can, to answer your question, yes, anything can be a zone. So the UHBC parking lot that Dustin was referring to could be a zone, its own zone. That revenue is separated and then accounted for and distributed. But as far as enforcement can the city enforce? That's a whole nother issue. I know OSU is open to enforcing our area, and they're open to enforcing, I'm guessing, other people's areas too. So that might be an option with OSU.
So I've always wondered actually how those things work. I mean, there's somebody that drives around and scans the plates in the zone, and it just tells them that person didn't pay.
Yeah, it's a lifetime database. So
you just have one car that's just continuously
one car with
circling?
2 cameras, and you can cover an area like we're talking about in our city multiple times an hour. So it's all lifetime. And then if we decide we have areas that are still timed and chalked, then we could have that too. So there are options.
Well, I guess I'm all for figuring out these kinds of modern systems. We're seeing much more. I'm seeing them all over the place, right? And not just in downtown Tulsa, but in smaller towns. You're talking about Lawrence and Starkville and those kinds of places, which are pretty analogous to here. So I think it's a no-brainer for us to try to figure out, can we improve some of these problems by bringing something like this in? I think you've been referring to a parking management program and said both downtown had it a lower priority, but certainly the Strip and Campus Corner had it higher. Just so we're clear, that means paid parking, right? That all of these spots, or the majority of these spots, would require people to pay some amount of money to park in spots that are now free.
Well, I mean, that is part. If you're going to have license plate recognition technology, some communities choose to still have free options. So we could, in theory, tomorrow slap an app-based that you're referring to, an app-based brand on all of our districts. You could say the first 45 minutes on the Strip is free.
Yeah.
We would bear the transaction fee, the 35-cent transaction fee for that person to check in on their app, still park for free, and leave the district. But some communities choose to do that. There's a community in Arkansas, Hot Springs, that's looking at implementing this, and they're looking at doing that to still have that first 30 minutes free. So for pickup, I used to own a store where we sold water bottles. Every water bottle is in the increased cost of what that is to just park and grab it and go. So you could have that option to have 30 minutes free, and then you still get to set those rules where you, in downtown, could erase the chalk. You're not supposed to, but they do. I've watched them. Or you move your car 2 spots over because you know exactly when they come by. And so you're abusing that system. When you've checked in on an app and say you're going to go eat at Hideaway or Louis, and you've paid for an hour, it will give you an alert that says you're having a good conversation. It'll give you an alert and says your time is up in 10 minutes, and you just tap that you need to add a little more time. But if you don't, our readers will read it and immediately know when those are expired in that zone.
Yeah.
And you can also set rules to answer the question that Claudia had, on the strip where you want it to make it, you could set a max time. So the strip merchants can work with us and say, this is the max time we feel like someone's going to actually park and come to our business in these amount of hours, and you just set that max time. So if it's 2 hours or an hour and a half, and that's the limit. So they can't add more time. A student couldn't be in class and add more time. They have to move their car. And you can even set rules on that car can't come back in that zone for a certain amount of time. So there's all kinds of things that you can do. I mean, and there's, one thing that kind of shocked me when I saw all this public parking we have around the campus corner and district, or the campus corner and the strip areas. On game days, that's 100% free, untimed parking. So
I think one of the
That's where I
important
park.
things to remember there too is that while we could receive revenue from that, that would help us support that infrastructure and that resource. It's really not the point of it, right? The point is to help promote turnover or make sure that people aren't taking advantage of those free spots. And it's part of that, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of the outreach to the community and helping people understand the kind of needs of the businesses and folks that are working there. I think it's an important point. It's not kind of
That's correct.
paid parking for the sake of paid parking. It has this kind of bigger
It's
goal in
That's right.
mind.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I made that point explicit just to make sure that we all understand that that's sort of what we're talking about, or at least partially what we're talking about. And, to sort of ask the follow-up question with, all of the business owners and stakeholders who have been part of these committee meetings. I mean, I know in the past, one of the, concerns about having paid parking in some of these areas was that business owners didn't want to make they felt like that would keep people from coming to their businesses if they were being asked to pay to park. And I respect that as an opinion. I don't know. I mean, it sounds to me like as a collective group that there are more people who say having people pay to park might actually improve the situation with turnover more than there are people saying we don't ever want to ask our customers to pay.
I think downtown, I mean, honestly, if I'm being honest, I think the downtown group will have, I've been shocked by some of the members of the committee that I thought would have some opinions on being against metered parking, even though I guess downtown was the first place that ever, we invented the car meter, or the parking meter was installed first, so it's kind of funny. But that I do think there'll be pushback.
Sure.
And someone on our committee who's well outspoken said it means you may have to move out of downtown, as downtowns change and evolve. If that doesn't fit your business model, it may look at some businesses that choose that there might be a better part in town that they need to participate in as things evolve.
I could see though with Block 34 coming so close into downtown and our hopes of really connecting that space to downtown, some of the same things that are happening on the Strip and Campus Corner, right, with people kind of staying for very long periods of time because there's festivals or whatever happening, events happening at Block 34, that same challenge could present itself downtown pretty quickly as hopefully those things grow and succeed in our community.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Anybody else? I had a thought, and I'm going to take me a second.
When we talk about these apps, I assume that it's still a Stillwater policeman that would ticket them if they had been parking for too long. Does that increase the number of policemen that need to be devoted to doing that, or as opposed to going through and chalking or having free parking?
So we had a conversation with Roy Stevens, who oversees our current enforcement, and he understood a lot of the things that I've been observing from other communities and what are some of the solutions of what the parking committee is wanting. And he looked and said, yeah, this might be an additional parking attendant, definitely not cutting parking attendants. We would look at having at least one car with the LPR camera technology. I shared some of the numbers of what Lawrence invested in their entire system, from the software packages to everything to implement the system in the cars. And he said, "Oh, that's doable." I mean, it's just, I mean, right? I mean, it's all we. I don't want to say that there's just excess revenue. It's just we would find a way to implement the staffing that we need, or currently, and use all of our current staffing. But you're talking about one car that could go through our districts multiple times an hour.
I just had one last comment I wanted to make. I understand the financial impact of trying to do a parking garage. I was really appreciative of some of the conversation you had about finding right-of-way parking. I think something that I see a lot in my work, and as I'm in kind of downtown spaces and districts, surface parking lots can really destroy the vibrancy of those spaces. So I think, right, that's why parking garages kind of came about, and surface lots can kind of be their own kind of sort of blight, especially when when there's a bunch of them right near these really busy areas. So I love the idea of right-of-way. Obviously, you can't avoid surface lots entirely, but finding ways to kind of maybe have redundancy, or kind of use them in multiple ways at once, or at different times of the day or something, I think is really important. I don't think that we would be very happy if we just developed a bunch of surface lots.
Yeah, no, I would agree. If we could get a free parking garage,
If somebody would just drop that down, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. No, because I mean, just share experience. Bobby and I and Crystal, and we dreamed about on 7th Avenue for years, like shutting it off and just making a pedestrian way in between the alley and Husband, and just having that great courtyard to grab your Aspen coffee and come sit, and whether it's a fountain or park your bikes. But that kind of creativity and some of those things that we love when we visit a town like Boulder, Colorado, and see those things, and we're like, man, this is cool. Wish we could have that. It takes those parking structures. That gives you the freedom to be more creative in your right of way. I agree.
Further comments? I will just add at the end here, just our collective thanks to all of you stakeholders who have participated in the process. This point, I know we've kind of all said that at some point, but there's a lot of great comments. What you put in the packet, some of these emails and different comments that folks submitted. I mean, there's a lot of. It's not really extra time and effort, because this is what you guys deal with every day, right? These are the problems that you deal with in your businesses and in your places of work and all that sort of thing. And I do appreciate you taking the time to sort of lay it out in ways that help us understand what those problems are and try to help us figure out what solutions might be viable. So it is very valuable that you participated and are participating in these conversations. And it's our job now to actually honor that participation by doing something about it. And so, I think there's a lot of the comment that there's no free parking, right? None of this is free parking. There's always an investment that's being made here. And we need to be good stewards of that public investment. I certainly think from a council perspective to, guidance, there certainly seems to be plenty of interest in the idea of looking at one of these sort of modern parking monitoring systems, figuring out how can we make better use of the spots that are already there, make sure they're being turned over, seeing how many additional right-of-way spots, we might be able to bring into a system like that. I would love for us to figure out if we can do some of that public-private stuff where there are private lots that are not being utilized as well as they could be, and if we could somehow draw them into this and make them part of our collective inventory. I think there is enough stuff on the fringes that we're just not using well right now that we could make a lot of improvement just by the efficiency before we have to start saying, well, let's tear down stuff and start building new parking. Not to say that's not something we're going to have to do in the future, but there's a lot of efficiency we could gain here with what you're suggesting. So we'll be back, next month and tell us how that's all going to work? Is that?
Sure.
Sometime in the near future, hopefully.
Yep, yep.
Further comments? Anything from staff want to add at this point? Yep, I've got a couple of quick announcements. Just want to make, due to the potential of inclement weather over the next couple of days, we do have some closings that will affect members of our community. The Stillwater Senior Center will be closed tomorrow, Tuesday, January 31st, as well as, which already have announced, Stillwater Public Schools, Meridian Technology Center, and Oklahoma State University will be closed. Please remember, if you're utilizing the Stillwater Regional Airport, keep an eye on your flight status through American Airlines. That can be checked online at aa.com. The League of Women Voters have rescheduled their City Council Candidate Forum, which was supposed to be tomorrow night, until Thursday, February 2nd at 7 p.m. right here in this room. You can watch the forum live on our YouTube channel, our municipal TV channels on Suddenlink 14 and AT&T UVerse 99, and the City of Stillwater Facebook page. And with that, we'd ask that you all travel home safely and stay warm and safe over the next couple of days. Hopefully we won't get anything too bad come through here. So, is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the City Council. Please vote. With a vote of 4-0, we're now adjourned. Thank you.